Today, we are going to preach on, or I'm going to preach on, the last piece of our Samson series that we've been doing for right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to do an in-depth character study of who Samson is. We're going to be looking very thoroughly at everything that happened in his life, that happened in the story of his life, and figure out, what does that tell us about Samson? How did God deal with the person of who Samson was, and how that relates to us? How will God relate to us? And we see that in the way that God related to Samson. Please pray with me. Heavenly Father God, Lord, please be with us now. Hide me behind the cross. Let us all see and hear a word from you. And help us love you all the more. In the name of Jesus, amen. Saved and Sociopathic, a Samson story. To start looking at who Samson is, first let's look at who he was supposed to be and to see if he led up to that. The name Samson had a meaning. Many, many Bible names had meanings, and often the meaning of a person's name had something to do with their character. Jacob's name, for example, was originally Jacob and meant supplanter, and it was really a fitting character trait or an identifier of his character traits. He tried to supplant his brother Esau, took his blessing, took his birthright. But then his name was changed to Israel, one who wrestles with God and prevails. And now that his name was a redefinition of his character had changed, so his name had changed. Just one example, there are many, many in the Bible. One more, Jesus' name, God saves. Exactly who he is, exactly what he did. The God who came down to this earth and saved us. Samson's name means sunlight, the rays of the sun. And just as when the sun is rising and the dawn is breaking, rays of sunlight start flooding the earth, letting us know that the day is breaking. He was to begin to deliver Israel in the days of the Philistines. He wasn't the full noonday sun, but he was the rays of hope to a weary and oppressed people. Did he live up to that? Oh, let's start taking a look. We're going to start in Judges 14. Judges 13, it was the story of Samson's birth. He wasn't an active participant in his own story at that point. So looking at Judges 14, starting at verse 1. And Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up and told his father and his mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife. What we see here is that Samson often was led about by his impulses, by his desires. He wasn't in control of his emotions were in control of him. And he just recklessly followed his impulses. The Bible doesn't say here. Samson had spoken with, gotten to know over a period of courtship, fell in love with a daughter of the Philistines. No. It says he saw her. He saw a woman in Timnath, a daughter of the Philistines. Said, I want her. I saw her. I want her. Get her for me. I saw her. I want her. Get her for me. Maybe he had a conversation with her. We don't know, but it wasn't the conversation that was on his mind. It was what he saw. And he was led by his impulses. And there was a failure to plan here. He didn't think about, well, I'm supposed to be this deliverer. I'm supposed to deliver my people from the Philistines. How will marrying into the Philistines fit into this plan? How will marrying one of the enemies of my God affect my life? We're unequally yoked. What will that mean for our children? Will our children follow and worship after Jehovah? Or will they follow and worship after Dagon, the god of the Philistines? What's going to happen years down the road? He didn't plan this out. He was just led by impulses. And then his father and his mother said unto him, Is there never a woman among the daughter of thy brethren, or among all my people, that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said unto his father, Get her for me, for she pleaseth me well. Verse 3. I want her. I saw her. I want her. Get her for me. And he stayed in his impulse. Sometimes when an impulse happens, we'll say something we really didn't mean to say, or we'll do something we didn't really mean to do. Had we taken a second and reorient ourselves, got our bearings, we would have done something different. Samson doubled down on his impulsive desire. Get her for me. His parents gave in to his request. They're going down to Timnath to meet this woman, to arrange the marriage, to make the engagement official. Then went Samson down and his father and his mother to Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath. And behold, a young lion roared against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he rent him as he would have rent a kid. And he had nothing in his hand, but he told not his father or his mother what he had done. Very interesting story. One, Samson had separated himself from his parents, and he found himself in the vineyards of Timnath. The vineyard is the last place he was supposed to be. He was a Nazirite, wasn't even supposed to eat grapes. Why was he there? Speculation, possible sermon for another day. But the thing of this story that we want to bring out is he just ripped a lion open. A lion was coming after him, and he destroyed the lion. Said he just tore him. He butchered the lion with his bare hands as if he would have butchered a young goat. If that happened to you, you were walking down, this lion came out of nowhere, and you defeated it. The Spirit of the Lord came upon you, and you were able to defeat this lion. Would you tell somebody? I would. I would at least tell them, the family I lived with, you're never going to believe what just happened. But he kept it to himself. He kept it a secret. This is indicative of a deceptive or secretive nature. And we're going to see this deceptive nature come out in a little bit. So they had the engagement, went back to where they lived. And it says, and after a time, that is anywhere from a few months to up to a full year, after a time they'd been engaged, he returned to Timnath to take her, to actually engage in the marriage ceremony. And he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. And he took thereof in his hands and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat. But again, he told them not that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. He sees the dead carcass of the lion. He turned to side just to see, oh, what's going on with that lion that I killed? Scoops honey out of it. This honey was not unclean, but because the honey was inside a dead carcass, and inside of a dead, unclean carcass, all carcasses were unclean, but of an unclean animal, that honey was defiled. That honey was ceremonially unclean, impure, and anyone who touched it, especially anyone who ate it, would become ceremonially unclean. And if you were ceremonially unclean, that could be a big deal. Because if you didn't know you were ceremonially unclean, and you tried to engage in a religious ritual in the worship of Jehovah, you faced serious consequences. You could be killed. You could be cut off from the people. These were serious consequences. And so if you were ceremonially unclean, you needed to know about it so you could do something about it. Engage in the ceremonial ritual to rid yourself of that impurity. Samson knew he was ceremonially unclean because he knew where he got the honey from. But he fed his mother and father this unclean, impure honey that now defiled their bodies ceremonially, and he never let them know. What if they had gone to do something on the behalf of their God? What if they had tried to engage in some worship service, brought an offering for sin, done something? Their lives would be at risk. Samson didn't think about that, though. He put his parents' lives at risk. He had a disregard for others. He just wanted to share this honey that he found. So now here they are. They're at the wedding feast. The wedding feast is going to last 7 days. And it says it came to pass when they, that is the Philistines. It could have been the Philistines, the family of the bride, or it could just be some general Philistines around. We don't know exactly who they were. But they, the Philistines, possibly the father or the family of the bride, saw him, that is Samson, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. We're skipping down to verse 20 just to look a little bit. We'll get back to it. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as his friend. We'll get to what that means later. If you know the story, you already know. But this is just pointing out that what says he used as his friend, that's the best man. Often other translations translate that used as his friend as best man. But what it meant in the Greek was the friend above all the other groomsmen, the other companions. This was the main person. So it fulfilled the role of the best man today. Now, if you were getting married, how do you select a best man or a maid of honor, or your groomsmen or your bridesmaids? They're from your friends, right? You go to those people you care, those people who know about you, say, hey, I'm getting married. And it's so exciting. And then you say, will you do the honor of being my best man? Will you do me the honor of being my maid of honor? Of course, I'm your best friend. Of course I will. When he shows up to the wedding, this 7-day-long feast, a party, a celebration, who did he show up with? His parents. He didn't have any friends. Nobody that he could say, hey, I'm getting married, come with me. Didn't even have someone that would be his best man. They had to be found for him from other people in the Philistines, among the crowd in the Philistines. He had few friends, if any. Possibly he had friends that just objected to the marriage on spiritual principles. Possibly. But in any case, if he had friends, he had very few. They had to be found for him. So he's surrounded by these new friends, quote unquote, and immediately decides to become very arrogant. And Samson said unto them, I will now put forth a riddle unto you. If you can certainly declare it me within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 change of garments. But if you cannot declare it me, then shall you give me 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments. And they said unto him, put forth thy riddle, that we may hear it. Immediately just starts, hey guys, I'm going to tell you a riddle and you're never going to be able to solve it. The arrogance. But this arrogance that he had was also based off of what we spoke about earlier, that deceitful nature of his. He said unto them, out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. And they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. Of course they couldn't. Nobody could know that riddle. That riddle was based off an incident in his life he didn't even tell his parents about. His parents couldn't figure out the riddle. If I'm being honest, the first time I was reading the story of Samson and I read that, I was like, what's he talking about? Oh, yeah, right. The lion thing, right, and the honey, yeah. Nobody could figure, it was literally impossible. He set these people up so he knew they would fail. He was deceitful, didn't even give them a chance to figure it out. They didn't take that lying down, though. They threatened his wife. They said, we're going to burn you, or his about-to-be wife. We're going to burn you and your father to death with fire if you don't figure out the riddle and tell us. After days I believe it was 3 days, but after days of her begging him, please tell me the riddle, he relented. She immediately told them, and he got mad. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave change of garments unto them, which expounded the riddle. And his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. He could have just said, I lost it. I did this riddle, and I got found out. I lost at my own game. Now I owe everybody these 30 changes of garments. I got to do it. Not how he took it. He was angry, and he impulsively, aggressively marched down to Ashkelon from Timnath. Timnath and Ashkelon were about 15 miles away. So I don't know if he walked, marched, ran. I don't know how he got there, but he took himself 15 miles down to Ashkelon. And after 15 miles, if you walked or ran 15 miles, you might have cooled down a little bit. You might have said, what am I doing? I'm not going to just kill 30 random people that had nothing to do with what just happened. But he did. Impulsively, aggressively, with a disregard for these innocent people that had done nothing to him, murdered them, took their garments, took their spoil, gave it back, and then in a hissy fit, abandoned his wife. He went up to his father's house. Oh, no, I'm not getting married. We're not doing the marriage thing right now. I know it's the last day of the feast. This should be the time where we should consummate the marriage. We're married, but no, I'm going to my father's house. Abandons his would-be wife. Now you could say, well, he was supposed to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. So here, when he was killing those 30 people, he was doing a good thing. When he abandoned his wife, he was doing a good thing. But he didn't kill those 30 people on behalf of the Lord. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him. The Lord used him where he was, but that was not on his mind. He was mad, so he took his anger out on people that had nothing to do with it. Then he left his wife. Impulsive, aggressive, disregard for others. When he comes back, all right, I've been gone long enough. We don't know how long. Could have been a few weeks, could have been a few months. We don't know. But at some point, he comes back and it's like, all right, honey, I'm home. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he used as his friend. Verse 20. He didn't consummate the marriage. He didn't finish the marriage ceremony. She was given to somebody else. And says, Samson said concerning them, the Philistines now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. He's angry. What do you mean she's not my wife now? I know I abandoned her. I know I left her at the altar. I know we didn't consummate the marriage. I know all of this, but she's supposed to be mine. It says, now I shall be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. He was vengeful. I'm going to take vengeance in my own hands. And there was this lack of remorse. This quote there on the screen that I'm going to read for those who are on the line. Justification is the enabler of cowardice. People are capable of abominable acts as long as they can justify it to themselves. They did me wrong, so now I'm going to do them wrong. Vengeful, lack of remorse. How did he go about it? It says, and Samson went and caught 300 foxes. Pause right there. How do you go about catching 300 foxes? How do you do that? Like, maybe there are people who sell them in the marketplace, but 300? How long did this take him? He's just setting up traps. He's going around hunting for them. I could just picture in my mind's eye, just people looking on. Samson walking around, just grabbing foxes left and right, shoving them, and just carrying a big bushel of foxes in his arms, just getting another one. Neighbors looking at him. What's Samson doing? Catching foxes. How long has he been catching foxes for? At least the past 2 weeks. How many do you think he's caught? I don't know, like 150 at this point? Oh, no, he's looking at us. Look away, look away. just the insanity, even if he had people to help him. And maybe God brought the foxes to him, kind of like Noah with the animals with Noah in the ark, and it made it very easy for him. I don't know how long this took him, but you got to imagine it took him some time. And so he catches these 300 foxes, and then he turns them tail to tail, ties them together, and ties a firebrand to the tails. This torch he ties to these foxes, and then he lit the torch on fire. These foxes that he found and he caught. And it says he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines and burnt up both the shocks and also the standing cord with the vineyards and olives. This was a big deal. This was huge. This wasn't a tit for tat sort of a thing. Oh, they did this, I'm going to get them just as bad as they got me. No, no, no. He went above and beyond. They lived in an agricultural society. Sometimes your harvest that you had, what you sold, had to last you for the year. You got paid once a year when you sold your harvest. Imagine if someone went into your bank account and stole a year's worth of your salary. An entire year's worth of salary, time, energy, gone. You were down the hole, however much that was. You would probably be a bit upset. Entire families went starving. We don't know how many fields these were. We don't know how many families it directly affected. We don't know these details, but it affected somebody pretty severely, and it likely affected the entire economy of Philistia. Why do I say that? Because if you were to take away one of the states in the US and just say, all right, all the resources, money, GDP, whatever, gone, it would affect the rest of the United States. There would be inflation. It would do something. The person or people or families who had these fields, those the fields of the Philistines, they would go and they would sell it in the market and people would be able to buy. So now wherever they were in Philistia, now this market didn't have all of these things, and it would be a ripple effect throughout Philistia. And again, yes, he is supposed to be against the Philistines. He's supposed to be fighting the Philistines. He's supposed to be at war with the Philistines. But he's not doing this on behalf of God, on behalf of Israel. I'm going to deliver my people. He's throwing a hissy fit. And I have to just point out, he murdered 300 foxes. You see the picture on the screen there? That's an Arabian fox, an Arabic fox. That is one of the cutest animals I've ever seen in my life. Look at those ears. Look at the nose, the eyes. I just want to kiss its forehead. And he took 300 of those and burnt them alive to make a point. What do you think? He chased them down and quick untied the torch when it got too close to their tails? That's one of the first signs of a serial killer, right? When you torture and kill animals. He burnt 300 foxes. If you don't care about the Philistines, you don't care about people and the families that are starving, he murdered 300 foxes. He was aggressive, vengeful, cruel. So what they did, the Philistines came up and they did burn his would-be wife and her father with fire. They took vengeance. He did something, they came back at him, something that they knew would hit him close to home. And Samson said unto them, though ye have done this, yet will I be avenged of you. And after that I will cease. After I get the last word. After I finish it. And he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. And he went down and dwelt in the top of the rock, Edom. We don't know how many he killed. It was a bunch. He smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. That's a good turn of phrase right there. He was again acting in an impulse, again aggressive, again vengeful. They did this to me, I'm going to do this back to them. They eventually threaten the people of Edom and To his credit, he allows them to tie him up, hand him over to the Philistines. And when he came unto Lehi, this is verse 14 of Judges 15, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands loosed from off his hands. Here we see God is going to use Samson right where he is. I still got a plan for you, Samson. You can still begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. You could still be used for my purpose. And Samson found a new jawbone of an ass and put forth his hand and took it and slew 1,000 men therewith. And Samson said, with the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. So again, we see he's aggressive, 1,000 corpses, but he's also arrogant. Look at what I did. I grabbed this jawbone and I killed all these men. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him. It wasn't him. The next verse, so it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand and called the place Ramath-lehi. And he was sore athirst and called on the Lord and said, Thou hast given this great deliverance into the hand of thy servant. And now shall I die for thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised? It was all him literally one verse ago. Oh, with a jawbone of an ass, look at what I've done. Now he's dying of thirst. God, it was all you, right? Please help me. He was reckless. He didn't realize he was getting thirsty in the heat of the battle. He didn't plan what he was going to do after it was all over. It was reckless, failure to plan. Now he's about to die. But of course, the Lord spares his life. Out of the same jawbone, water pours out. And then verse 20, and he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. This was his job. His job was to be a judge, to be a ruler, to begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. But as we looked at 2 Sabbaths ago, he was an irresponsible, complacent ruler. He didn't take his job seriously. He was fine with the Philistines. Once he got the last word, he was fine. The next verse, first verse of Judges 16. Then went Samson to Gaza and saw there an harlot and went in unto her. Impulsive. He went, he saw, he did. I saw her, I want her, I get her. Didn't learn anything over the past 20 years. See her, I want her, I get her. Samson lay till midnight and arose at midnight. Philistines had surrounded the city. They'd surrounded, not necessarily the city, but they surrounded him. They're like, all right, we're just going to wait till morning. When he comes out, we're going to get him. Wakes up at midnight, arises out at midnight, and finds the gate locked. Philistines weren't ready for him. And it says here, he took the doors of the gate of the city and the 2 posts and went away with them, bar and all, and put them upon his shoulders and carried them up to the top of an hill that is before Hebron. He carried this gate, who knows how long, all the way up the top of this hill. I believe it was at least a mile or some change. I don't quite remember, but it was a while. Amen, that Spirit of the Lord saved him, gave him that strength to carry it away. But either this was an impulsive act, because he's, again, not even thinking, oh, I'm way far away from the city. I can throw this gate off now. He's just like, nope, not even thinking anymore. I'm just act on impulse. I grab the gate. I'm just going to keep on holding on to it. I'm going. Or is this a sign of arrogance in that there was this custom back in the day where if you conquered a city, often what that army would do is they would take the gate of that city and carry it away as a show of their strength. This gate did nothing for you. You might as well not even have it. That's how little it helped you. So either this was an impulsive act, an arrogant act, or both. Again, acting on impulse, and it came to pass afterward that he loved the woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Just doing whatever he does. It's all I want her, I get her. The Philistines get to Delilah, and they say, Delilah, we're going to give you this silver, but you have to figure out the source of Samson's strength. Let us know. Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherewith thou mightest be bound to afflict thee." That's a red flag, wouldn't you say? He could have said, "I'm not staying in this relationship. Clearly, she doesn't have my best interest at heart." But arrogantly, he was like, he starts toying with her, telling her lies. Well, if you tie 7 green ropes around, that'll do it. That didn't work. So it's like, all right, well, try new ropes. Nope. Try weaving the 7 locks of my head. Nope. He's toying around with her. He's playing with fire, thinking he's never going to get burnt. He can obviously see what's going on here. Why are you trying to take my strength away? Why do you want to know? What use could this possibly have for you? And you keep trying the thing that I tell you. You keep trying to take away my strength. Why? It's just, I'm just going to keep playing with fire. I'll never get burnt. Eventually, recklessly, he tells her. When he's beaten down so much, he can't deal with her whining to him and complaining to him and crying to him. He just says, all right, fine, here's how you do it. You cut my hair. I'll lose my strength and be like a normal man. Did he think she wouldn't do it? Or did he believe that, oh, even if my hair's cut, God's got me? She said, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he woke out of his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times before and shake myself. And he wist he knew not that the Lord was departed from him. I'm going to skip now to the end of his life. He's blind. His eyes have been gouged out. He'd been working as a slave. They bring him in. Oh, here was Samson. He was this great, huge judge and hero. He was so strong and we couldn't beat him. Look at him now. Put him between these 2 pillars to mock at him and laugh at him. Samson called unto the Lord and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, I pray thee, only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Here he was calling on God, and he didn't say, God, I messed up and I want to do your will, and you wanted me to deliver the Philistines, so that's what I'm going to do. Help me to glorify your name and fulfill the purpose you sent me here for. No, wasn't that. It was, they took my eyes. I want to kill them. It was that same vengeful, impulsive spirit. It wasn't about glorifying God. It was about, they did me dirty, I'm going to do them dirty. They took my eyes, I'm going to take their life. The reason he gave, God, I want to take them out because they took my eyes. Help me. Help me get revenge. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all his might. And the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. Judges 16:30. That's the end. His family buries him. But this is the story of Samson. Every act that he'd had in it. What do we learn? Well, we learn that Samson was impulsive, reckless, aggressive, deceitful, vengeful, irresponsible, remorseless. Pillar of faith. Pillar of faith? He's listed in Hebrews 11. Samson? And what more shall I say, for the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and of Barak and of Samson, of whom the world was not worthy. Samson, the serial killer? He's included in the ranks of Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Joshua, Rahab, Samson. How? By all objective standards, he fails to meet the basic test of a Christian. How does Samson make it in to Hebrews 11? Fine, he's going to be in glory. That's cool. That's great. I'm happy for him. How is he a pillar of faith? How is he someone we should emulate? in any respect. He had a very unique relationship with God. Judges 16:22, howbeit the hair of his head began to grow again after he was shaven. God knew the type of person Samson was, and he met Samson where he was. God knew the type of person Samson was, and he met Samson where he was. The hair of his head began to grow again. And as we've talked about a few times, that's symbolic of his relationship with God. His relationship with God grew again, began again. How does this happen? How does God work with somebody like Samson, who at the very end of his life still didn't seem to quite get it? Well, we looked at the qualities that Samson had, the type of person he was, and it made me think of mental health issues. And I went into the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's on its 5th version. And I found this mental health illness. It's called a personality disorder. A personality disorder, by the way, are one of the hardest disorders to treat. Most of the time, clinicians don't even bother. There is some help for those with borderline personality disorder using a very, very, very intensive therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy. But more often than not, personality disorders aren't fixed, they're managed. They're not changed, it's just who they are, but it's managed. I'm not limiting God. I'm not saying God can't do a thing. I'm just saying more often than not, this is how it's done. The personality disorder Samson had was antisocial personality disorder. We often think of antisocial, oh, they just don't like talking to people. That's how we use it in the lay terminology. Oh, you're antisocial. Oh, I'm antisocial. Ha, ha, ha. Not what that is. Antisocial personality disorder is what we would call, in layman's term, a sociopath. Unfeeling, does whatever they want, doesn't care. You know, the great serial killers, John Wayne Gacy and all of them, sociopaths. Antisocial personality disorder is a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others. A pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others, as indicated by 3 or more of the following. Failure to conform to social norms concerning lawful behaviors, such as performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Did Samson do that? Let's see, murder, stealing. If you want to just look at the Hebrew economy, he ate from the honey that made him ceremonially impure. Let's see, deceitfulness, repeated lying, use of aliases, or conning others for pleasure or personal profit. Conning others, he tried to with the riddle. Deceitfulness, tried to with the riddle. Didn't tell his parents where he got the honey from. Impulsivity or failure to plan. All the way through the story, he was impulsive, led by about just whatever it is he wanted at the time. I want it, I see it, I get it. I want her, I see her, I get her. I see her, I want her, I get her. I see it, I want it, I get it. Irritability and aggressiveness, often with physical fights or assaults. Yep, that was Samson. Reckless disregard for the safety of self or others. That was Samson. Put his family at risk. Obviously murdered a whole bunch of people. Reckless with himself. Yeah, go ahead, cut my hair. Consistent irresponsibility, failure to sustain consistent work behavior, or honor monetary obligations. His work was a judge. Did he do anything with it? No. Irresponsible ruler. Lack of remorse, being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another person. Yeah, that was Samson. Well, it's not my fault. It's their fault. They started it. Yeah, I know I did a thing, but it was justified. there is this thing, it's called the narcissist prayer. So this is another personality disorder. But the narcissist prayer is, where did it just go? Narcissist prayer. That didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, it's not a big deal. And if it is, it's not my fault. If it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it. Samson. Oh yeah, he justified it all the time. So here we see 7 different traits of someone who might have antisocial personality disorder, a very, very serious mental health issue. And Samson checked every single box. That doesn't happen all that often when it comes to mental health issues. You know, they might check most of the boxes, but he checked each and every one. This man clearly had antisocial personality disorder. His brain did not work right, to put it in a very blunt, kind of a rude sort of a way. A nicer way would be to say he just wasn't neurotypical. He wasn't neurotypical. God met him where he was with the personality disorder that he had, knowing that Samson, when he reached out in faith, Lord, I believe that you're going to take care of me. You're listening. Help me to avenge myself for my 2 eyes. We would look at that and say, it's still about self. It's him being selfish. It's him just wanting to get personal vengeance, to square a vendetta. God looked at him and said, he's doing his best. That's as close as he could get. I'll meet him there. That's as close as he could possibly get. I'll meet him there. He reached out in faith. That's what counts. Does God meet us where we are? Absolutely. For he knoweth our frame. He remembereth that we are dust. Psalm 103, verse 14. He knows that we're not all perfect. He knows that we all have issues. And he meets us where we're capable of meeting him. I want to look at real quick the capacity of the human brain. And what you see on the screen there is you see a healthy brain scan, or a brain scan of a healthy, normal, I don't like the word normal, let's say neurotypical, of a 43-year-old person. The other brain scan is a 43-year-old person who has alcoholism. What do you notice differently about the brain there? The normal brain, thick, healthy. It's got the white matter and the gray matter, and it's got all the neural connections that's really fleshed out. The 43-year-old who has alcoholism, look at what the alcohol has done to that person's brain. Shrunken it, all the different connections it has, all the little lobes just shrunken, kind of all separated, doesn't work as well. And that's permanent. When people engage in persistent, pervasive substance use over the course of years, they can do damage to their brains that is permanent. There's this thing's called, well, obviously you know what decision making is, but there's different levels of memory that can factor into decision making. So there's, let's say, a 4-step instruction. If you take a 3-year-old, any 3-year-old, and you give them a 4-step instruction, all right, what I want you to do is I want you to stand up from the chair. I want you to twirl around in a circle 3 times. I want you to go to the light switch, turn it on and off twice, and then come back and sit down. That child will get out of the chair and be like, now what? It was too much to process. It was too much to take in. They can't do it. There are some people with brains, such as the brain on the right side of the screen there, that is so impaired through all of the substance use, cannot follow that 4-step instruction. Just like the 3-year-old or the 4-year-old will stand up, go, all right, now what? It's too much. And so sometimes and I'm not just picking on people who deal with substance abuse issues. I'm just using this as an example. But what we do is we'll look at somebody else and we don't know what's going on with them. We don't know if there is something wrong with their brain. We don't know if they're going through a mental health issue, because they do brain scans of people who are quote unquote normal, neurotypical, not going through depression, not going through anxiety, not going through ADHD, not going through PTSD, not going through whatever it is. And then they show the brain scans of people who are going through those things. And even though the brain structurally looks the same, the brain is acting very, very different. Neurochemicals and neurotransmitters are working differently. Certain areas of the brains are lighting up more. Some of the areas of the brains aren't lighting up at all. And so we look at somebody and we'll say, I told you to be here at this time. What's wrong with you? What do you mean you didn't make it to church on time? You know what time church is. Oh, yeah. You didn't read your Bible today, of course. How long has it been? You say you love God, but didn't you just speak out of turn? Didn't you just speak impulsively? The judgment we heap upon others, and we don't even know what's going on with them. Sometimes people who seem like they're not listening don't have the capacity to actually take in everything that's going on. That's why we should have compassion one for another, because we don't know what's going on one with another. The brain on the screen there, the one with alcoholism, it impairs decision-making, memory, impulsivity. Those with depression, anxiety, dopamine and serotonin in the brain are affected. Same with PTSD, ADHD. We should be kinder to one another, because God, who knows everything about everyone, meets people where they're at. And maybe the person is us. Maybe we should be kinder to ourselves. Stop comparing ourselves to the person next to us and engage in an actual relationship with God on our own. We're not supposed to do everything that everybody else does. Maybe you're the one that struggles with depression, and it's like, I try to be happy in Jesus, and I count every blessing like the song says, and I name them one by one. And I try to look on the brighter side, but I still can't stop being sad. God sees your faith. Maybe you're the one with anxiety. I know I shouldn't worry about things, and I try not to. I know that Jesus said that he takes care of everything, and he takes care of the birds, and he takes care of everything, and I don't need to worry about tomorrow. But even when I know I don't need to be worried about this, I can't stop the anxiety from creeping in, and I can't stop my brain from going 1,000 miles a minute. God sees your faith. Maybe you're the one with PTSD, and you're like, I'm trying to leave it in my past and go forward, but it keeps coming up, and it's ruining relationships, and it's ruining this, and it's giving me nightmares, and it's ruining my sleep, and I can't function. God sees your faith. Maybe you're the one with ADHD, and it's like, I try to sit down and read the Bible, but my brain won't focus on what I'm trying to do, and it keeps wandering off. Or I try to sit and pray. I really do. And I try and I say, God, I'm going to pray to you right now. And I start the prayer and my mind drifts off, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about something else. And it bothers me, because I want to do for God. And I want to read my Bible, and I want to have a good prayer life. But these things just keep happening. I can't make my brain do it. God sees your faith. Whatever you might be going through, whatever it is you're dealing with, God sees you, and God is meeting you where you're at. And he's meeting me where I'm at as well. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for better. It doesn't mean that we should stay exactly where we are. But even if we're in a place permanently, Samson, he had antisocial personality disorder. It would only have been an express miracle on God's part if that changed. And I don't mean gradually, little by little. I mean, that's just the way his brain saw the world. Somebody with severe substance use or whatever, brain's changed. That's it. I'm not saying, and someone, just whatever it is, God can help us get from point A to point B to point C to point D, but sometimes where we're at in a certain way is just the way that our brains work, it's just the way where we are, and God meets us there. And I'm not saying God lowers the standard. I'm saying God meets us where we're at. I'm not saying some people can go around and just, oh, well, my history. Oh, well, this happened when I was a kid, so this is why I do this now. And, it is what it is. I'm not saying that. We don't have excuses. But God meets us where we're at. God sees your faith. If you're struggling with something right now, if God can forgive Samson, use Samson, count Samson as a model of faith we should aspire to. Samson, he killed 300 foxes. I don't know if you forgot about that he murdered foxes. He did that, among all the other things. God can use you and he can use me. He can love you. He does love you. He loves me. Maybe the lesson from Samson about the faith that he had is that even though he didn't have everything right, he didn't let that stop him from coming to God. Came to God where he was, how he was, and he expected and trusted in God's faithfulness to accept Samson where he was. Come to God with faithfulness, that he will accept you where you are. And God will lead us to wherever he's going to lead us to. And God will give us victory over sins, and God will help us to be better people. Of course. But let's come to him in the faith of Samson. God, here I am. You know what I struggle with. Please meet me here and help me. And he'll help you. For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful, and will not turn away his face from you if you return unto him. 2 Chronicles 30, verse 9. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. I'm with you always, even unto the end of the world. That's the Jesus we serve. The Jesus we serve died on a cross for you, if nobody else, for you. And he's lifted up on that cross, or he was lifted up on that cross to draw everybody to him. When we see Jesus on the cross, we see how much he valued our lives, our souls, our eternal destiny. He loves you so much that while we were yet sinners, he died for us. You think because you struggle with depression or anxiety or ADHD or a substance use issue or a personality disorder, that he's going to turn his face from you and say, not you though. Not the God we serve, not the Jesus I love. The Jesus I love will draw near to us where we are and will help us. Samson was saved and sociopathic. Save us as well. Go to him in the faith of Samson. Thank you.